began the season of Lent. Lent is 40 days long. Actually, Lent is 46 days long. Some of you may have noticed this. Those of you who like to count days on the calendar. I'm sure there's some people who do this, I don't know. You may have noticed it's actually 46 days long. It's curious. Well, the tradition of Lent, of course, is that Christians would fast during the season of Lent. And there are different traditions depending on when and where you live, but you would abstain from food for at least part of every day. But Christians have always been forbidden to fast on a feast day. That's why it's called a feast day, because you feast, you don't fast. And every Sunday is the feast of the resurrection of Jesus. So you cannot fast on a Sunday. People are actually forbidden. People who wanted to fast all the time, and yes, there were a few of them, not many, you were forbidden to fast on Sundays. So Lent is 46 days long, but we say it's 40 days. There are 40, you might say, active days of Lent. And we just began this period of 40 plus 6 days this Wednesday. Now this number 40, of course, isn't arbitrary. We're told that the Israelites wandered in the wilderness for 40 years. And today we see the same number come back up in Scripture, right? Jesus in the wilderness for 40 days. Fasting, being tempted, going through this pretty harrowing ordeal, right? Meeting Satan face to face. Doesn't sound very pleasant. So some people might be wondering, is this what we're supposed to be doing during Lent for these 40 days? Do I have to go out in the desert and fast and be tempted and see the devil face to face? It doesn't sound very interesting. We might have a hard time getting newcomers if that's what we're saying they have to do, right? Come join us at St. Augustine's. Seeing Satan face to face. It's not going to look really good on our Facebook page. And the answer, of course, is no. I said on Ash Wednesday, in my Ash Wednesday sermon, that Lent gets a bad rap. Right? People think of Lent, Lent is a time to feel guilty and feel very down, and you have to pay for all the things that you've done, and you punish yourself. And it's unfortunate that that's how a lot of people think of Lent, because that's not really what Lent is about at all. Lent is a time for self-reflection and honesty. It's really just a time to be honest, right? Be honest with ourselves. Be honest with God. Who am I? Who am I really? And who do I want to be? And as I said on Ash Wednesday, if you're anything like me, there's a gap between those two, right? Maybe it's relatively small, maybe it's kind of big. I don't think any of us does everything we'd like to do. I don't think any of us is fully the person we wish we were. We all fall a little short. Lent is a time to just be honest about that. Just take stock. So some people might find, you reflect on yourself, you're honest with yourself, and you realize, maybe I don't give enough. I'm not generous enough with my time or my money. So you might decide to go volunteer, or just make sure that you spend more time with your family. Or you might choose to give extra money to charities, or your local parish, just saying. Right? You decide to be more generous. Or maybe you say, you engage in this self-reflection and you realize, my spiritual life is kind of dried up. Lent would be a time to then say, all right, I'm going to start praying more often. I'm going to read Scripture more often. I'm going to meditate more often. I'm just going to go on long walks more to give myself time to center myself, right? You notice that gap and you decide to try and close it at least a little bit. Sometimes it's not that we're not doing enough, we're doing some things too much. Some people might discover in Lent that, anger is a big part of their life. They're feeling too angry. So Lent can be a time to seek more calm, try to move away from that anger. Or we might say that instead of not giving enough, we're spending too much time or money on things that aren't really that important. We might choose to sort of scale back, pull back. Lent is a time to just be honest, right? To understand who we are and who we want to be and begin to make that movement. So it's a time of honesty, but then action. Reflection, but then taking action on what we've learned about ourselves. Lent is a time to try and be our true self, our real self, the self that God calls us to be. Now, this is all true of us as individuals. Lent is a time for us to reflect for ourselves, but it's also true for us as communities, right? Churches, congregations should engage in self-reflection, right? Who is St. Augustine's? Who are we as a community? And how do we feel God calling us? Who should we be? There's a lot of wonderful things about St. Augustine's, but I don't think anyone would say that we are a perfect church of perfect people with no flaws, with nothing that we can improve. I'm going to humbly suggest that, maybe we have room to grow too, right? God is calling us. Maybe there's a gap there God is calling us to fill. And today I think is an especially appropriate day for this, right? Because after our service today, we have our annual meeting. We do really fun things like vote on bylaws and go over budgets. It's very exciting. I'm sure you'll all join me right afterwards with lots of passion and energy. We have food to tempt you in, so that's how we get you, right? So our annual meeting is about reflecting on our last year. So it's a good time for us to be reflecting. But I'd also go further and say, St. Augustine's, this is an important year for us to reflect because in many ways, St. Augustine's has been through its own period in the wilderness for a while, right? For over a decade, St. Augustine has had to make a lot of tough decisions. You had an old building that you realized you had to either do really serious work on or maybe replace. And you made the decision to tear that building down, sell a lot of the land, raise that money to build a new building. Not an easy decision to make. And then you had to find a contractor and an architect and go through all of the legal process of putting up a new building in D.C., which is substantial, as people who were in the vestry at the time know very well. And then you had to come into the building and work out all of the things that weren't working right. Every new building has all those issues that have to be worked through. For over a decade, you all have had to work hard just to exist on this location. You had to struggle just to be St. Augustine's in Southwest. And I'm sure a lot of people didn't think it was going to happen. Some members here didn't think it was going to happen, I'm sure. I know at least one bishop, not our current bishop, but one bishop didn't think it was going to happen. And I know that there were some developers who didn't think it was going to happen and who hoped that it would not happen. But here you are. Here we are. You've been through this ordeal. We have this absolutely gorgeous building. So now the question is, you've survived. We've gotten through that wilderness. We've crossed the Jordan again and we're back. What do we do? What do we do at this building? What do we do in this place? What is God calling us to do? What is our next step? We've survived. Now how do we thrive? So again, Lent is a crucial period for us to be honest with who we are and then ask, who do we want to be? Or better put, who is God calling us to be as a community of Christians in Southwest? Ultimately, I think that our ability to succeed and thrive and grow as a community will depend on whether we remain attentive to that question. Who is God calling us to be? Not who is it easy to be, not what would be convenient to do, but who is God actually calling us to be? What is God calling us to do here? My hope is that Lent we really will have discussions about this. Now here's the thing, I personally, in my own prayer, in my own reflection, I'm convinced that at least part of the answer to this, who is God calling us to be? What is God calling us to do is God is calling us to go out and serve the people of Southwest even more. Now this morning at 8 o'clock, we did a lot of serving. Folks here fed probably over 40 of our neighbors. Bread for Life breakfast has been going on for, I believe, 25 years, almost nonstop, every single Sunday, a full warm breakfast provided. This is an example of serving the community. But I think we can do even more than that. I want to support and sustain and even expand Bread for Life and then add even more. How else can we serve this community? That's how we will not just survive, but thrive. I want Lent to be a time for us to really ask this question. I hope that you all will talk to each other. What are you passionate about? What kind of work would you want to do here in Southwest or nearby? Right? What kind of service would excite you? We have 6 weeks to have that conversation, and on Easter Sunday, I'm going to stand up here, and I'm going to announce something. I'm not quite sure what it is yet, but we're going to commit to at least one, and maybe even more than one, new way we're going to serve this community. Now, I want to give you just a few examples of the kinds of thing it could be. It doesn't have to be these things, but I know that just saying we should serve the community is abstract. What does it mean? Here are 3 possibilities. Maybe we'll choose one of these, maybe we won't. But here are 3 possibilities. One, we have a lot of neighbors who live in public housing. And we know that the future of public housing in this city is under threat. So we could work with groups like Empower DC. Some of you met Jillian Burford from Empower DC a few weeks ago. We could work with Empower DC to really build relationships with our neighbors in public housing and ask, how can we assist them? How can we build relationships with them to meet their short-term needs? And also, how can we work with them to protect affordable housing in this city long-term? That's one path that we could take. Another path would be, we have lots of homeless neighbors too. And the Bread for Life program provides a great meal on Sunday morning, but people have more needs than just one meal a week. What else can we do? We provide clothing. We provide other services. And not just immediate services, but how can we advocate for better policies so we can see a future in which there are no homeless people in DC because they've all got a home? That's another path we can do. We can work with a group like Community Connections that works with homeless folks here to do that. That's a second path. Third, we could work with incarcerated and formerly incarcerated people in this city. There's over 1,000 folks living in the DC jail who need immediate assistance. And there are folks coming out of that jail every week who frequently have little to no support. We could work with them to meet their immediate needs. We could also, again, work as advocates for better policies for this city and this region to reduce the number of people who are incarcerated and increase support for them. That's a third path. These are 3 examples. And maybe as a community we'll decide that one or more of these is a path we want to go. Or maybe you all will come up with something else. Tutoring students at Emmett and Bowen. Going out and cleaning up the river. I don't know what it'll be, but I want us talking together. And like I said, I'm committing us now. Okay, April 12th, I'm going to stand here, and at least one thing is going to come out of my mouth, and then we're going to go do it. We're going to see that gap, and we're going to actually move on it. One of the messages of Lent certainly is that none of us is perfect. It's not about feeling guilty, but we can be honest. None of us is perfect. But the good news is that God ain't done with us yet. Right? God is working with us, nudging us, speaking to us, encouraging us to grow and develop into who God calls us to be. So let us use this period of Lent to be honest with ourselves as individuals and as a community. Let us trust that it's when we actually choose to live like Jesus that the life and the salvation of Jesus actually comes into our midst.